in the in-between moments of life. You've arrived in the hall. The talk hasn't begun yet. Don't waste the time, because much of your life is wasted in between things. You left one destination, you haven't arrived at another destination, you're on the journey, and you're usually way ahead of yourself, or you're thinking or playing or fantasizing, but you're never really here. So please remember, if you want to have a full life, the in-between moments are where most of your life happens. And if you learn how to wait in the present moment, being here rather than, it should start now, why has it not happened yet? Then you miss too much of life. Which is like one of those insights which monks get. And sometimes people say to monks, where did you get wisdom from? Where did you get these insights from? Did you get them from the sutras? Did you hear them from Ajahn Brahm? Sometimes you do hear them from Ajahn Brahm, but you forget them. You do read them from the sutras, but you don't understand them, because most of your insights, they come from the stillness of the mind. That's where insight comes from. The more still, the more clearly you see. And it's all thoughts are the ones which jumble up the truth, so you can't really understand what's really there. Just give mirages, images, which you take to be real, like the rainbows on a wet day, thinking that that's something solid, and it's not. It's just a trick of light. And that's much of people's understanding about the world. Just tricks, just illusions, but not the reality, because it's only in stillness that you see the world as it truly is. But I haven't really gone to the depths of stillness yet in these talks. I was talking yesterday about some more of the obstacles in meditation, especially when you get to the nimittas. And then today, the jhanas. Woohoo! And don't worry, you think, oh gee, I might as well go back to my room now and have a sleep. The jhanas, I don't even understand them, and I will not even close to them, not in this life. Don't be so negative about yourself. Sometimes the most unexpected people get these jhanas. It was about a year ago or something. They had one of the he's not here today, thank goodness. Had one of these meditators. He came here, and he looked like what we call in Australia a bikie. Lots of tattoos. This big guy, big hair, really fierce, and like someone from the Hells Angels. And number one, I never thought, what's somebody from the Hells Angels doing on a meditation retreat? But number two, I thought, well, just anyone can come. Maybe just calm down a little bit so he's not so violent, and so he could drive his motorbike a bit more slowly. That's what I thought. I mean, it's just total stereotyping. And then he came to these interviews, and my God, this guy was describing jhanas, and he was getting into them, not one, but many. And I just, wow, he was the very last person you would ever suspect get these amazing states. And that's one example amongst many. These other people, they've been Buddhists for years. They've been born in Sri Lanka. They've actually been soaked in the Dhamma. And they've been practicing ever since they were that high. And they're sitting down there. No. But these JoJos come from just nowhere. And they sit down, tattoos all over them, and then, yes. So I can't judge these days. So that is one reason why I don't mind talking about this. And the other reason I talk about this, every now and again, you get some people who spontaneously get these states. And the classic story is of this. I was teaching a retreat in Penang and having interviews morning and afternoon. And the organizers, they asked special permission for this woman to come in, even though she was not on the retreat, because she had some psychological problems and it was causing her a lot of difficulty and no one was able to help her. And sometimes they ask a Buddhist monk as the last resort. So when she came in, I had no idea who she was and what the problem was. And then she started to talk to me and started to describe this what she thought was a psychotic experience. And then she started to describe going into a jhana. And I just, again, it was just so pleasing to see. I knew exactly what had happened. She just pressed the letting go button, body disappeared, getting into deep bliss. But she couldn't understand what the heck it was, and that was driving her crazy. And then when she finished her description, I said, oh, that was just the first jhana experience. And I gave other details of what she'd experienced there. And she recognized, yeah, now somebody understands what I've been through. They were sending me to this psychiatrist and that psychiatrist and asked me to take this medication and that medication because they hadn't got a clue what they were doing. And as soon as I said to her what it was, she went away just such a happy girl. She understood what had happened and she knew that I knew. And I said, well, this is just what happened. You probably won't do it again, but if you do, next time do this. And so it was one of those cases, and there's been a few of them where people spontaneously get these states. And so because of that, I like telling people about these jhanas and also to describe the way in, which is also a way of not forcing your way through, not even thinking your way through, but what I've said years ago, feeling your way into jhanas. These are emotional states which take a lot of skill dealing with emotions such as bliss and fear and excitement and learning how to develop one and calm down the others. And you cannot ever think your way into these states. And straight away when you say you can't think your way through these states, that overcomes a lot of hurdles for many people. These are feely states, if you want to use a gross word, instead of think and intellectual states. It's one reason why intellectuals have a hard time getting in there, because they always control their world through thoughts and ideas and concepts, and that's a world they're used to, and they have to let all of that disappear in order to feel their way into these incredible states. And straight away, that's a great insight. The intellect and thought can get you so far, but it cannot take you further. There is a time when those thoughts have to be put aside, and to go for the feelings, the intuition, what feels good, what feels right, and that takes you deeper into the meditation. Now, on that subject, sometimes that people ask, this is one of the other hindrances I haven't dealt with yet, the hindrance of doubt, because a lot of times people wonder, is the meditation going in the correct direction? Is the meditation not going in the correct direction? Which direction is it going in? And how do you know? You won't always have a teacher in front of you. And if you go on the internet, there's hundreds of teachers. And surprise, surprise, they don't all say the same thing. Why can't you teachers and experts get together and just, make sure you're all teaching the same? It will never be that way. Because then one person comes from this direction, another person comes from another direction. But how do you know? How can you actually be sure that you're not getting lost? Because there's an old simile. The Buddha called doubt like being lost in the desert without any signposts, and you don't know which way to go. And there's a famous story about being lost in the desert, about this guy who'd been lost in the desert for days, hadn't had any water, had probably sunstroke, and was crawling on his hands and knees with maybe only a couple of hours of life left in his body. Hopeless, desiccated, sunstroke, and just so thirsty, with hardly any energy left. And in the distance, he saw something shimmering on the horizon. And as it got clearer, it was a dog sled coming in his direction. One of these sleighs been by these husky dogs. And he said, this is the mirage. You don't have these things in the desert. I must be just imagining these things. My brain has got fried and it's just a mirage. And he gave it up. But as it came closer, he could make out very clearly 6 dogs pulling a sled with a man in furs on the back. And he said, I'm losing my mind, this cannot be real. But as it came right up to him, the dog started licking him. It was real. And he cried out, he said, I thought it was a mirage, I've been saved. Oh, thank you so much, I've been lost in this desert for days and days. And the Eskimo who was driving the dog sled replied, and you think you're lost? Okay, that's a bad joke, but I'd say at every retreat. And when people ask, why do I keep saying the same jokes? It's because Buddhists believe in reincarnation. So jokes have to go round and round as they get reincarnated. But anyway, now the real thing about doubt is that sometimes, again, it's like lost in the desert. You haven't got any signposts, but you have got some signposts if you can recognize them. And the simile which I give, was a simile of when I was lost in the mountains in Scotland. I was up there in the mountains, and the mist came down so quickly. And that really shocked me, just how fast, in a nice blue sunny day, a cloud comes over, it comes down, and you're enveloped in mist, and you can't see your hand in front of you. And so, like most people, you think you have a sense of direction. I knew the way I came, I'll just turn around and go back again. Ha ha ha. If you're in whiteout in Norway in a snowstorm or in a mist, you have no sense of direction at all. Because eventually I was walking and I came across a cliff which was very, very steep. And I looked on the maps afterwards and I found I'd gone 180 degrees the wrong direction. It wasn't even just a little bit off track, totally in the opposite direction I thought I was going in. And when I saw that cliff and realized one more step and I would have been dead, I got very scared. I was lost. And people had told me all these stories of being lost in these mists for days and days and days. Just walking around in circles, not being able to get your way out again. And that was a real possibility. But I just, this is like doubt. You're in meditation, going round and round in circles, wasting a lot of time, not knowing which way you're going. You think you're going in the right direction, but how can you know? But I used a little piece of insight. There were lots of little brooks and creeks in the mountain. And one thing I did know was water flows downhill. So I just found a little stream and followed it. Because knowing the mist is only high up, when you go lower and lower, you eventually get below the mist. So I followed a little stream, followed it and followed it and followed it and followed it. It means at least I didn't go around in circles, because streams don't go around in circles. I do, but not the stream. So I went down, 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 down until it got underneath the mist. And I could see then, I could get my directions. And that's how I sort of escaped. And I use that simile for meditation. So you're not really quite sure what you're doing. You're in the mist. But at least you know that this meditation is supposed to give you greater peace, clarity, joy. So you follow those streams. You know what peace is. You can feel it. It's an emotional quality. The same as this inner joy and the clarity, the clearness of your mind. If it's going in that direction, follow it. If it's going the opposite direction, you're getting more tense, your mind is getting more scattered, and you're getting more frustrated, in other words, less happiness and joy, that is the wrong direction. Turn around. You may think you're going in the wrong direction, you're not. So greater peace, greater stillness, greater happiness, greater clarity in mind. Those are the qualities which you should develop, which will take you deeper into the meditation until you get to that place, in this metaphor, underneath the mist, you can see the directions, you know where you're going. It becomes quite clear what you should be doing next. So that's a nice little teaching for you for when you get home. So you don't really need a teacher, because those qualities in your emotional world, they are your guides. Keep following those, and you'll soon be able to see everything for yourself. Which is why it is an emotional thing. Which is also why you use insight rather than force, rather than willpower, or rather than even thought to get deeper into these meditations. The beginning part of the journey of meditation, you can use a bit of thought or willpower, do this and do that. That's fine, because that time your mind is not that sensitive. But the deeper you go into meditation, the less you can use thought, the less you can use willpower. In fact, you really do need to let go and to focus the mind on emotional qualities. Not even on physical things like a light, but on the feeling of the light. The joy, the peace, the power, and be able to work with that. This is actually where emotional skills become paramount, which is also one of the reasons why we teach in ordinary Buddhist life how to let go of fear and anger and planning, how to develop this beautiful loving kindness, and how to be at ease with loving things and loving yourself, which for many people they feel a bit uncomfortable with. So you get to these stages, the light starts to come up into your mind. Number one, at least trust yourself. People have so much self-doubt and they think it can't happen to me. Look, trust the emotional world to allow happiness and goodness to come to you. You deserve it. Remember what I was saying even last night. Simple things like always receiving praise and just pushing aside criticism. That goes against the grain of what you were taught, but it works. And when you allow happiness to come in and all this stuff which is negative, you allow to disappear. It means when you even get to nimitta stage, you've got a positive mind rather than a fault-finding mind. Because in those images which you might see in the mind, they will always have a beautiful part and a less beautiful part, a sort of delightful part and a scary part. And why is it that some people always go to the scary parts of life? Years and years ago, when I was visiting England, I went on to this retreat. I was the attendant with Ajahn Brahm when he went on to a retreat in this North England mining town called Darlington. And when we went there for a weekend retreat, the people joked to us, everybody else, they leave this city on the weekend and you guys come here. Because, this was just about Margaret Thatcher time, or just pre-Margaret Thatcher time, when just this whole area was decaying and there was so much unemployment and everything was crumbling away. All those old industries were now sort of defunct. And when it came for our morning walk, we went to the park, we went to the gardens, we had a wonderful time. And then afterwards, when we came back, our host said, "Where did you go?" And we said all these beautiful places, which you can always find in even a decaying city. You can find some beautiful parts. And he said, "That's really interesting, you two. That really," because he was a psychologist. He said, "That really shows that you've got these positive minds." Because the last monk who came here, who was a bit of a depressive, he went down to the old gasworks. He went down to the industrial part of town for his walk. He gravitated, to the grey, slimy, dirty part of town. Why is that? And why did a monk like me gravitate to the gardens and the flowers and the nice grassy places? You can see that if you have this positive mind, actually what you tend to go towards. Now even physically, when you have this fault-finding mind, this negative mind, you go to the rubbish dumps of life. You seek them out. And developing that, giving up that negative fault-finding mind, developing this positive, grateful, loving kindness mind, if you do that in your ordinary life, you find that really starts to help you when you get to nimitta stage. In all these nimittas, there's always a beautiful part and there's a not so beautiful part. And people always want to fix up the faults. We want to manage the errors. We want to sort of make it more beautiful before we can go on. And that never works in this nimitta meditation. You get the wisdom to not be a fault finder, but be a positive mind. Just allow the mind just to go to the gardens, the beautiful part of that nimitta. And I've told many people, because in these nimittas, I'm not sure if I mentioned this yesterday, but it bears mentioning again. Sometimes the first nimittas you might get are just like scenery, not this beautiful, simple light which is glowing, but something much more complicated. And I remember telling people that one of those nimittas in particular was like green fields, rolling hills, a river, a sort of a few trees. Just a nice, pleasant sort of scenery, which you're meditating, you actually see it very clearly. But then I had this positive mind. I would always go to the most beautiful part of that scene. And to me that was this beautiful tree. And on that tree I'd go to the most beautiful leaf. And on that leaf there was a little dewdrop on the end, which sparkled. And that's what my mind instinctively went towards. And from that little sparkle, this beautiful, simple light came out. Now that is actually a very skillful, insightful way of dealing with this part of the meditation. You incline towards beauty. You just get off all fault-finding and get to something which is nice. And that gives you the more joy, the happiness, and the stability, because whenever there's faults and errors, there is something to be done. That's what faults mean. I've got to fix something up. Whenever it's beauty, it's perfect, you let go, you leave it alone. So by inclining towards the beautiful, then the nimitta really develops. And you also do that in your daily life. The insights you develop in meditation are the insights which you use in ordinary life as well. It's not just, okay, I'm going to get nimittas, and then the rest of the life, it's something completely different. It just means in your life you're always inclined towards the beautiful, you're not so fault-finding, which means that you don't find so much fault in your partner. You just see them as a beautiful being. And you don't find so much fault in yourself. You don't find so much fault in Jhana growth. It's a beautiful place. Yeah, there's lots of things which need to be fixed up. But no. Who cares about those? I'm going to allow my mind not to go to the gasworks of life. I'm going to go to the gardens of life. And you find, because you have that beautiful mind, you can see the happiness and beauty in anything. Even when you go to prisons and see prisoners. And this is a very important part of the training of a human mind. We are so fault-finding, we're always critical, we hardly ever praise, because we don't see the beauty. We're not allowed to, or we're just blind to it. So when you do that in your life, you do that in the meditation, and both come together, and you get into this incredible happy mind state. Now, once that starts to happen, again you have very intense emotions. Already that sometimes, going back a bit, sometimes people have come to me on the interviews and say they felt like crying. Please cry. There is nothing wrong with crying. Even guys, please cry. And I told quite a few of you. There was a fellow here a few years ago, Caucasian Australian man, and he came to see me for the interviews and he said, what's going on? I started crying. I stopped it straight away, obviously, but I felt all these tears coming up. And I said, what did you stop it for? Bad meditator. And I found out later on that he was one of these Australian men, and when he was about 13 or 14, he was told men don't cry. And this poor guy had not cried in about 30 years or 25 years. So once I gave him permission, he spent the rest of the retreat crying. He had a lot of crying to catch up on. And this wonderful guy, he was just so happy afterwards. There wasn't sort of tears of sadness, it was tears of letting go and joy and bliss. So when those things happen, please, let it come. And you're just not suppressing, because you're dealing with an emotion here. And there's obviously many different crying emotions. For some people, just crying, and that's all you know. But just like the Eskimos and 16 parts of snow, meditators can know 100 different types of crying and the emotions behind those. And many of those emotions are beautiful. Stay with them. Use that as your object of meditation. You're not watching your body, you're not watching your breath. You're mindful of that emotion, not trying to get rid of it, respecting it, letting it come, letting it be. It's the emotion of piti sukha, as they say in Pali, the joy and bliss. When I said a few days ago that sometimes you think you can't take any more ecstasy, that is just a fear which we have. We're not supposed to be happy. We don't know how to deal with it because that happiness and bliss is totally out of control. That is a problem. We want to control our lives so much that even when we're having a good time, we can't allow that if it's not as much happiness as I want, when I want it, in a manner I want it. We always try and control these things. And as many of you will know, emotions are totally out of control. That's one of the great teachers of us. They just come, and if we try and resist it and control it, we make it much, much worse. All we can ever do is just let it come and be with it and enjoy it. And that's actually what we do in this part of meditation. The emotions come very strongly. It's incredible bliss or love, as many people see it. And you've got to be at ease with that. In other words, you have to let it be. Even though you can't control it. And you have this great feeling that this is bigger than me. I'm out of control. I can't do anything. I'm losing it. How many of you had strong emotions and felt like that? I'm losing it. Well done. You are supposed to lose it. What are you losing anyway? You're losing this control and judgment and me and possessions and all this sort of stuff which you think is so important to you. You're losing all of those negative things and the ability to sort of control things. So you just have to totally, as I was saying, often throw the keys away and just enjoy it to the max. And at that particular stage, the emotion gets incredibly strong. Beautiful, beautiful light. Very, very, the bliss becomes more important than the visual seeing of a light. When nimittas start, I say, usually you can see scenery or just flashes or something. It's a visual part of it which is the most prominent. But when the bliss becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, the visual part is not so important. It's the bliss which is important, the emotion of ecstasy. That becomes dominant until that's all that's left. And that's why, because it's so strong, number one, you let go of all controlling. And, it's so strong you can't feel your body or even hear sounds. You're having way, way, way too good a time. And then you go into these jhana realms. And what are these jhana realms? When you come out afterwards, remember, you cannot think within these jhanas. You can't say, if you're having a meditation, you say, is this a jhana or is this not a jhana? If you can think like that, it ain't. You're not able to ask such a question in those deep states of stillness. The mind can't move like that. Instead, it's only afterwards when you come out, you think, my goodness, what was that? And that's when you look back and you find out that that was just a lot of bliss. Inside there you couldn't form a verbal thought. And then you can actually find out by the degree of stillness, and especially the type of bliss you've been watching, what particular jhana it was. But in particular, all the jhanas, just the tick boxes you have to tick off. You can't hear any sounds. You can't feel your body. You can't make a thought. Your object is bliss, and you're there for a long time. And that's sometimes in hours you're in these states. You can't come out, because who wants to come out? You're having the time of your lifetimes. You don't want to miss this for anything. And it's just natural. You have a great time in there. So, and you don't have to be scared. Sometimes, this is a lovely story about people getting into jhanas for the first time. There was a classic little story during Ajahn Chah's time. When he would give a talk, sometimes, you read his books and they're so inspiring and they're very wise words. That is not the real Ajahn Chah. Because what the monks have done when they translated it, they've edited all the rubbish. They've edited that out and they've only left the beautiful stuff. Real Ajahn Chah, he would talk for 5, 6, 7 hours, and it was boring as hell, rubbish, nothing made any sense. But every now and